G'day folks, MBS. Hey, look, I'm going to cover a little bit of old ground again. Last time I did this video, a few people didn't catch on what it was all about, so I thought I'd do it again and explain it in a little bit more detail. It's all about listening, okay? I'm half deaf, but I can still hear the beat of the starter motor as I'm cranking it when it's not starting. So what we're actually listening for is for compression variation, not a compression test, okay? This will not tell you what compressions there are. All we're doing is listening to the beat of the starter motor, cranking it over, and you'll hear it. Every time it hits a compression, the beat will change, and you'll hear that beat, all right? And that's all we're doing. And in point of actual fact, this is the very first step in any tune-up. That's right. When you look at anybody's oscilloscope, if people have still got them, I have seen them around, the first button you press is the no start button. That stops the vehicle from starting. You've got a clamp on your battery terminal. You've got all the other leads on so it can sync with the correct cylinders, and all you do is crank it. Okay, open the throttle just up a little bit to allow air to get in, just like you would with a normal compression test if you were doing it manually. And you just crank it and you listen for the beat, yeah? And that's all it is. It's not going to tell us how much pressure is in the cylinder. It's going to tell us almost nothing except if it's got an even compression throughout all the cylinders. And that's all we're after. That's the very first test on any oscilloscope that I've seen. I've had a Bosch and I've had an Allen, and the very first button is the compression test, not by sound, but by cranking amps. Because the oscilloscope will measure the cranking amps and it'll tell you if one cylinder is down on compression. That's all it is, just a compression variation. From there, you can diagnose it further, yeah? So if it sounds like it's got good compressions, this is a 4-cylinder, so if it sounds like it's got 4 good compressions, I can go ahead, put my scope on it, do further testing. I can check vacuum to see if there's a valve problem. There shouldn't be, not with sounds like 4 compressions, but I can check if the rings are okay by looking at the vacuum, acceleration, deceleration. So there's more tests to be done after this test, all right? This test does not guarantee everything good, and I'll talk about that later when I rehash on the 6-cylinder that I did. I'll show you an extract of that and the sound the starter made on those. And I'll tell you what was actually wrong because I pulled that engine down later. All right, so we're just going to disable the ignition system, yeah? That's the easiest way sometimes, just disable that. On my car here, I have to use a spanner because everything's bolted down to the coil, so I can't do that. The alternative would be to take the coil lead off your distributor cap and earth it, okay, so you don't get an open circuit when you're cranking it, all right, if you can't disable it. All right, because one thing for sure, you don't want the engine to even remotely look like it's going to start. That would be disastrous for this test. All right, so I'm just going to overlay a voice file on this. It's not actually my car that I'm going to be cranking, but just to make it look good, I've already got a 4-cylinder recorded, and a good one and a bad one. So all you do, yeah, open up the throttle a little bit, put your hand in there, turn it over. Okay? And that's what 4 good compressions should pretty well sound like. All right? So let's have a listen to another one. What if it sounded like this? A little bit different, isn't it? Okay? You can definitely tell that has got a problem. It's down on 1 cylinder on compression. And that's all we're doing, folks. From there, you get your vacuum gauge out. If you've got 1 cylinder down, get your vacuum gauge out and see what the vacuum's doing, whether it's bouncing all over the place or what. If it's staying steady but low, but doesn't reach its highest vacuum when you accelerate and decelerate, it sounds like it could be a ring, yeah? Because it's not getting enough vacuum. Piston ring's not sealing, so it's not pulling as well. All right, so there are more tests past this one. This is just your initial test, and this is what I did every time, well, nearly every time I was going to do a tune-up with a customer. I'd just do a cranking test while he's there, and if it sounds good, I'd go, yep, okay, I can tune that. If it sounded like that second one, I'd go, mate, I can't tune that. You've got a mechanical problem of some sort. We'll need to diagnose it further. And that's all it's about, okay? Nothing more, nothing less, all right? If we find we're down on a compression like that second run I just did, maybe I would look at doing a manual compression test. But believe it or not, I'll tell you the truth, I'd be lucky if I've done 5 compression tests in 20 years. Okay? I know it sounds crazy, but I never had to. Hardly ever had to, because there were always other signs that would tell me what's wrong with the engine if I had compression variation. All right? So I'd have my vacuum gauge, I'd have my oscilloscope, I have an emission analyzer. Between all those, I can diagnose the engine. But have I got a scope now? No, I haven't. All right, so I've got to do it just like everyone else does, the hard way. All right, so I've had a bad compression. My next step, if I don't see oil coming out of the tappet cover or anywhere there, if it's not fuming, all right, I could probably assume that it might be top end. Assumptions can get you into trouble. So I would do an actual compression test just to confirm where the problem lies. Top end, bottom end. Yeah? That's it. All right? So let's go back to a snippet of a 6-cylinder Torana I did and have a listen to a good one. Now let's listen to a bad one. Okay, big difference, isn't there? All right, the bad one. That's the one I pulled down, the 6-cylinder Torana. It had compression down on number 6. Yeah, we know that from that video if you've seen that video. However, when we pulled it down, it had top broken rings, all cylinders, every one of them. Number 6 had the second ring broken, and that's why it was down even further. So, was that test a waste of time? No, it wasn't. I could tell exactly what was going on. Oil all over the tappet cover. Down on compression, fuming while it's running. What else more do you want? A reason to be tearing that engine down. You know what's going on. It's got to be rings, yeah? So that compression variation test told me straight away, you got a problem, mechanical. We can see oil. Okay, it looks like rings, okay? It didn't give me a compression. I didn't have to do a compression test on that vehicle. It was pretty obvious. But if you can't figure it out, if you haven't got a vacuum gauge, etc., or you haven't got a few tools on hand that you can diagnose the problem a little bit further, do a manual compression test if you feel that you have to for any reason, especially when there's variation. If there's no variation, you still may like to do one if you haven't got a vacuum gauge, but I wouldn't personally do one. If I had a vacuum gauge, I could tell from the vacuum reading if the rings are in good condition. All right? So I think that's about covered that. I've covered all the little erroneous points that I didn't cover in that first video. So yeah, just understand, you're not doing a compression test. You're just listening to the starter motor beat to see if you have a mechanical problem. If they're all even, that still doesn't mean you have good compression. You'll be able to tune it like that, even if it's got a broken ring all the way through, all 6 cylinders. The compression will be even, but your vacuum will be low. And I diagnose that as I'm going along, all right, when I'm tuning it. All right, so this thing's going to get a birthday shortly. I'll be doing all that sort of stuff, compression test and all that sort of thing. I know it sounds pretty good by sound, so we're going to do one anyway, just for an exercise to show people how you do a compression test. So we'll catch you in another video. I hope that was helpful for you. Catch you later.